tools for tracking subcontractor cost by job for contractors. If you look at your cost of goods in your entire construction business, your subcontractors are likely your biggest variable cost, and yet we don't do a very good job of tracking it. If you can't tell yourself how much each sub cost on that job, you can't tell yourself how profitable that job was. By the end of this video, you're going to know how to track your subcontractor cost by job so that your slime of the cost of goods are accurately reflected and you know whether the job was profitable. We get to work with a variety of contractors of different types, general contractors, subcontractors of various disciplines. It's super interesting to see a lot of the things that are common across the contractor space, and yet there are a variety of things that if you go sub by sub and GC by GC, that things are just done differently. It's usually done under the title of, well, you know, construction's different. This is all different. We're like, sort of. It's business. Business is hard, and the contractor space is peculiar, and there's some things that we need to be aware of. But it's all kind of hard. Business is all kind of challenging, and that's why we're doing these videos and trying to do some education around this. So let's think about the idea of tracking these subcontractor costs. When we're meeting with all these GCs and subs, they tend to give us feedback on the different subs and labor that they're working with. And one of the biggest frustrations we hear from all of these disciplines is, oh my gosh, if we could just get everybody on the same page, right? And a lot of getting people on the same page is the frustration that when a GC works with 8 different subs or 25 different subs, they have 25 different methodologies, 25 different billing terms, 25 different everything as it relates to the sub, rather than there being kind of a stereotypical prototype. We also work with some of the big national builders, and what we have found with them is that when they contract with their subs, it's either you follow our process or you don't do our work. Now, I want to challenge you as a smaller contractor and construction business owner. What if you started to think like that? What if you started, before we get into the details of actually how to track the subcontractor expenses, what if you first start with the mindset of working with subcontractors and beginning to standardize how it is that they work with you? And so rather than them just going kind of every man or every woman for herself, it is, no, this is the process by which we work, and this is the process by which we ask you to come and be a part. So if you look at the diagram, I want you to just see, wait, what if we standardized everything around this? And we need to start with understanding that, as I said before, subcontractors are usually our biggest line item cost in the business overall. If you were to add it all up and look at your cost of goods is definitely in a construction business going to be the biggest expense in most cases. But the biggest chunk of that is likely going to be the subcontractors that come in with the installation and including the material and the equipment. So let's start with slime and why we call it that. So really this is birthed out of this idea of cost of goods sold. So when you go on and a typical job cost follows this contract value at the top, subtracted by cost of goods sold, which gets us our gross profit. And from there, we then subtract out our overhead for the business. Basically, those are all the expenses it takes to, quote, run the business. These are the expenses that it takes to run the project. So 2 different elements there, but we need to account for both. So we do a great job of estimating, getting our contract value. Some of you are like, I don't even know if we do a great job of that. That's a whole nother different story to make sure that we have a great estimate that we then can subtract the cost of goods based on that estimate out of to get our gross profit, which leads us to understanding our overhead and expenses. So where does slime come in? Well, this is born out of cost of goods. So what makes up your cost of goods is the slime of a construction business. And so that slime is very simply subcontractors, labor, materials, and equipment. Subcontractors, labor, so these are all the people side of your cost of goods. And then the materials and equipment are all the non-people side of your cost of goods. So if you look at it and you think at the end of the year, I pull a P&L and I see how big my cost of goods are in a construction business, not in a professional service business, but in a contracting environment, that's going to be your biggest cost most years for what it is that you're doing. So it would make sense that we want to have clarity around what those costs are. And if one of the biggest is the subcontractor cost out of that slime, then let's create standardization and a mindset shift around how we interact with those subcontractors. So I'm going to give you a couple of tips and tricks around that and then show you how to track. First thing that you need to be aware of, every single year, or at least twice a year, you ought to have a subcontractor training day in your construction business. What does that mean? Bring all your subs in that you work with. Make it mandatory. Hey, as a condition of working for us, you have to complete 2 training days and we only offer 2 in the year. And so these are the days that you've got to be able to come. Well, Scott, they're going to revolt. They're not going to come. They're doing your work. You're doing their marketing. And so they need to make a commitment to be there. And so in those subcontractor training days, and we have lots of clients that are doing this, they usually make it fun. They have an agenda. Sometimes the contractors want to share their vision of where they're headed because all of these other subcontractors are, tied to that vision, what that looks like. But they also want to share best practice. Hey, moving forward, in order to work with us, here are our expectations. And during that time, they also want to hear from the subcontractors. What are things that we're missing on? So this could be 2 hours over lunch. This could be a half day. We know clients that actually turn this into a big event twice a year where they buy TVs and gifts and they do raffles and just make it a lot of fun for the subcontractors. They even have their competing subcontractors there. Might have 2 or 3 framers in the room, 2 or 3 exteriors people, whatever, but they bring them all in and they're basically declaring to their subs, this is how we operate. These are the expectations. And as a part of that, they talk about this idea of billing subcontractors. Because if you think about it, the subcontractor's livelihood is based on the profitability and the longevity of the general contractor. If all the general contractors started misrepresenting their numbers, then eventually all the subcontractors are going to be out of business at some point, at least with current installs and upfits and what they're doing. And so we want to have standardization not only across how we work together, but also when it comes to managing cost, and cost interact with so many other things like billing cycles, billing terms, making sure that cash flow is there. If you think about your WIP billing, you think about overbilling and underbilling. So you look at work complete, and then you still have things left to bill, that's underbilling. If you look at work complete and you have billed more than the work complete, that is overbilling. And so all of these things come into effect when you're thinking about this. The most common place to start when it comes to managing the sub cost is the invoice. So take that one invoice that a subcontractor is going to send to you and immediately, I want you to have a spreadsheet, whether it's a piece of software, I do not care. One place where you are going to take every invoice on that job for that sub and put it in one spot. If you can start doing that, you are going to not only have an accurate estimate from your estimate, but you're also going to have a more accurate cost of goods because you're taking your sub invoices and putting them in there. Now what I want you to do is not just the subs, but the materials and the equipment and any other labor that's involved with it, I want you to do the same thing. Good job costing is about repetitive, predictable, and meaningful documentation of the things that have been generated all throughout the life cycle of that project. And if you want to understand not only whether was that project profitable or not, but if you want to understand a whole host of other helpful information in how you build and grow your construction business, then you've got to do a great job of tracking all these. And the easiest way to do it is every invoice that comes, number one, require invoices for everything. We're not doing handshake deals around here. Require invoices for everything. Bring those invoices into a spreadsheet or whatever software that you're leveraging. And then at the closeout of the job is when we can subtract our cost of goods from our contract value, determine what our gross profit was, tag the overhead to that, and that gets us to the net income and the profitability of the job. Now, I've talked about a lot of numbers. I've talked a little bit of systems and processes. All of this element of managing subcontractor expenses really falls under the heading of running an entire construction company. I want you to click on the link in the description below, and I've got an entire masterclass that I've built out. It's long form. It's really, really good for sitting down and taking notes. That'll actually teach you how to build systems for your construction business. And one of the systems is your financial system that houses how to track your job costing and all of these other things. So you need to make sure to spend time there, because once you understand how to manage your subcontractor cost by taking all their invoices, lining them up, subtracting that and making it part of your cost of goods, subtracting that from your contract value, that will help you to determine job profitability. And from there, you can start to determine the ultimate question when you're working with subs. Is this a sub we want to continue to work with? Or is this a sub we don't want to continue to work with? Because every job that you sub out from here on out, you're going to be getting sub vendor pricing, and you're going to wonder, is this a sub we want to work with or not? And I think it'll help you in an amazing way to get you out of that chaos, because we want you to be liberated from chaos to make time for the things that matter most.